Welcome back. I'm speaking with David Webb about the significance of the failed nuclear missile test along the coast of Florida that was headed for Florida and the implication of the wider Trident nuclear program. Thanks for joining us again, David.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Now, David, one of the things that is interesting is that the British people voted for the Brexit, and one of the arguments that was used is really about UK's autonomy and functioning as a nation state and its independence in terms of its institutions and decision making. But the UK does not even have authority to use this Trident system without the permission of the President of the United States. What do you know about that? And does this mean that there will be greater merger between the United States and UK when it comes to military might and exercises, and also in terms of potential wars going forward?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. We've been arguing in our campaign for nuclear disarmament for many years now that this is not an independent system. Totally reliant on the United States. It's unbelievable that any of the missiles will be fired without the okay of the US president, as you mentioned, even though we're continually told by the military and by the government that that is not necessary. The okay of the US president isn't necessary. But I can't see that that would ever happen without that kind of acknowledgement, without that okay. Not only that, but the Trident system that we have is basically part of the NATO system too. It's kind of handed over to NATO as part of their military operations as well. So it's not independent of NATO, it's not independent of the United States. It's part of the Western kind of militarism that's been building up over the last few years since the Cold War. It's these kind of things that are quite not really debated properly in the Parliament in Britain. The only debate we've had just recently is the one about renewing the system, and that wasn't really properly informed. And that's the whole point of that's the reason why there's so much furore at the moment, because the Parliament itself thought that information which should have been disclosed was being withheld for political reasons, and that seems quite likely. Obviously, there are people will be saying there's the government, national security is at stake, you can't give away too much, etc., etc. But a clear statement saying that there has been a test failure, that these failures have happened before, that things are being improved, etc., etc., should have clarified the situation, and it would not have changed the vote, I don't think, because there was a big majority in favor of renewing the system. So it's not really understandable why it was kept secret.
Right. And what is the actual cost of it? I know that Parliament was debating whether the $40 billion should be approved to update and bring it to some standards. But you claim, or your organization, the CND, says that $205 billion is the cost of the Trident system. Which is it?
Well, yeah, it's 205 billion pounds, actually, which is, I don't know what that's worth. The pound is not worth as much as it was, but it's a lot of money. At one time it would have been nearly $300 billion, I guess. But that's over the entire lifetime of the whole system. So over maybe 10, 15, 20 years, spread over that period of time. So the original or the initial $40 billion you mentioned, that would be the initial payment for the first part of that. But then there's payments every year that have to be made on kind of upkeep, on new components that are required to build up the system, etc., etc. So over its whole lifetime, it would cost 200 billion pounds. We say, not only we say that, but also parts of the government itself said that. A Conservative MP who is part of the defence system has worked that out with his team as being the true cost of the system, and it's probably likely to go up far more than that as well.
Right.
over the next few years.
Right. It seems to me that the Conservative government of Theresa May is relying on the defense industry to really boost the economy. I mean, recently she also signed a deal with Turkey in terms of providing arms and weaponry to Turkey. But many people claim that this is actually a good thing. It creates a lot of jobs, these kinds of Trident systems, it encourages investment and so forth. What's your view on that? And can we scrap the Trident system and still create jobs in the economy?
Yeah, I would suggest that if you scrap the Trident system and put the same amount of money into something else, then you'd actually create far more jobs, because these are kind of intensive financial packages, these high-tech systems. You don't create very many jobs, high-tech jobs, with huge sums of money, whereas in other industries you can create far more. So, for example, if you switched from making armaments to something like renewable energy systems, solar panels, etc., which is something that we need anyway to combat climate change, then you would create far more jobs and become far more productive and far more environmentally friendly, and put the world in a safer position, I think. So those are the arguments. There are a number of jobs. The jobs aren't a huge number of jobs, and in the past other things haven't stopped governments from closing down whole sections of industry, like the coal industry here in Britain. The steel industry is closing down in Britain too. And you're right about the emphasis on armaments, and we're one of the top salespeople in the world for selling arms and materials to other countries. Saudi Arabia is another big customer of Britain in terms of armaments. And this is becoming, I think we're becoming rather embarrassed, ashamed of what we're relying on in order to survive in the global system. I think we can do a far better, far more environmentally friendly, far more secure, create a far more secure world by doing something quite different.
Indeed. David Webb, I thank you so much for joining us today, and looking forward to following these issues with you in the future on the Real News Network.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
David Webb is the chair of the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, and we've been speaking with him, and thank you for joining us here on the Real News Network.